Hello everyone and welcome back to Conway's Corner. Today we are going to be going over what I plan on playing on full release on February 21st, which at the time of recording is in 5 days. I am going to be playing Acid Flask Falconer, which is probably not the best idea. However, I really like playing Jank builds, I really like playing autocast builds, and this will give me both. So I want to really quickly go over the build. As with my Warlock video, I have not put a lot of points anywhere. I have not put them even really where I think they should go necessarily. However, I think grabbing the increased throwing damage off of Missile Mastery, as well as Pursuit and Once in Blade Dancer to increase our throwing attack damage both on a percentage base and flat damage is going to be great for us. And then in Falconer, I haven't done anything really, since the only thing we want off of Falconer is going to be Explosive Trap. So let's really quick go over the build. First off, Shift. Shift should look pretty standard to any other melee-focused Shift build, grabbing Hidden Blades, Molting, and Shadow Slip. Shadow Daggers, of course, being just incredibly powerful, although I do believe that Shadow Daggers is going to eat a pretty big nerf come 1.0. However, Molting and Shadow Slip are both very good pickups. You see them on almost every single Shift build, as being able to cleanse ailments and giving us invuln is massive. The last bit of points going into Velocity and Momentum. Velocity to reduce the cooldown and the mana cost, and Momentum to give us a little bit of movement speed buff. We're going to save Acid Flask for last, so we'll skip over to Puncture. Puncture we're using to get our mana back, so we're grabbing Mind Piercer. We are grabbing Death's Imprint once again for the Shadow Daggers. And then we are going to grab the Guaranteed Bleed stacks, 2 points to get our Frenzy buff. And then our leftover point goes into Splinter, as Physical Resistance Shred applies to bleed damage. So it's just a little nice extra boost. We don't really need the point anywhere else, although we could go into Cadence of Death, remove 1 point from Splinter, put it into Cadence, and call that a day, although I would prefer to have the increased Physical Resistance Shred, as Puncture is not going to be our main damage skill. Next up is Explosive Trap. So Explosive Trap has a few really nice things that we want. Number one is going to be Instrument of the Alchemist. Whenever Explosive Trap dropped by Trap Sprinkler, it also flings an Acid Flask for you towards the target location. So Trap Sprinkler here, along with Automated Bombardment, means that whenever an Explosive Trap detonates, it has a 100% chance to drop a fresh Explosive Trap at its location, as long as there is an enemy within 6 meters. And then Trapuchet will actually throw that trap towards an enemy within 12 meters, which is going to increase from 6 to 12. So we'll have traps getting thrown at enemies. When those traps get thrown, they're also going to throw an Acid Flask for us. The other thing we went ahead and grabbed is Minefield for more active explosive traps, and Clustered Explosives to throw multiple traps at once. And then over here we went ahead and grabbed Hold This, so the explosive traps will actually attach to the enemies, and then after a 1 second delay, go off. And we went ahead and grabbed Aspect of the Rabbit, which makes the traps that are attached deal more damage. And if the explosive trap is attached to an enemy and that enemy hits you, the trap will then be passed on to you. Now, you won't take friendly fire from this. However, the damage will increase by 30% every time that trap passes within the 1 second it takes for it to get armed. So theoretically, if this works the way that I think it does, and the way that I really want it to, is the trap gets attached to an enemy, the enemy hits us, passes the trap onto us, it explodes, a fresh trap is created, flung at the enemy hits us, it passes back to us. If we can time and sync it right, we can have 2 traps getting looped back and forth between hold this and Trebuchet, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, to constantly have 2 explosive traps up, getting passed back and forth, and going off, creating new ones that are getting thrown. Every time that trap gets thrown, acid flasks get flung at enemies. We'll be able to kind of just spam puncture to keep the acid flasks and the explosive trap loop going. So if this does work that way, then I will be a massive happy camper. This will be very entertaining to watch. My big hope is that we get enough procs going and we can get this going fast enough alongside the acid flasks themselves and our Falcon, who will be throwing acid flasks, to lag out or potentially crash the game. I have played a lot of builds in this game that will either lag the game out or just wholesale crash it, and I want to keep that up. I want to crash the game on launch from a jank build. That is true endgame for me. Not high corruption. I've already done that. I've already gone to 2K corruption on multiple different specs. Not doing T4 bosses. I've done that. Not doing endless arena to see how far I can go, because to me that's just doing endurance runs in Warframe, and endurance runs are part of the reason why I left Warframe. Crashing the game because you have too many particle effects going off is true endgame. If the build doesn't lag the game, it's not a good build. Moving on though to Falconry. Falconry, we went ahead and grabbed Falconer's Journey to keep our Falcon's damage up, keeping it on pace with us, as it makes our Falcon's damage scale with our level and our dex. This is just a nice added bonus. I mean, at level 100, you're going to have, 100% extra damage, or 100% more damage. Let me rephrase that, because more and increased don't mean the same things. Same thing for our dex. If we get our dex even reasonably high, that just means our Falcon is going to have more damage. I'm not too concerned about how much damage the Falcon itself does, as Falcon is here to apply Falconer's Mark, which will have our enemies taking more damage, giving us a movement and attack speed buff. Marking Strikes is here, just increase the rate at which we apply marks. Avian Arsenal, which is just gonna give our Falcon a little bit more damage when we consume a mark. But this right here is the big part, right? Toxic Airdrop. Our Falcon now throws acid flasks for us. The acid flasks thrown by the Falcon scale with our stats and our acid flask tree. So this damage buff does not matter for the Toxic Airdrop. It will still consume our mana. However, moving on though, we've got Flask Satchel, give them more acid flasks that they can throw before it goes on cooldown. And then Parrotkin whenever we directly use Acid Flask. So it won't proc off of our explosive trap throwing Acid Flask, but whenever we actually press the button, it can get an Acid Flask back. So we've talked about Acid Flask a whole bunch, so let's go ahead and look at it. To the surprise of nobody who's tried to play with Acid Flask, we are going to go with Explosive Flask. Explosive Flask is going to get rid of the poison damage and the poison pools, and instead just be a grenade. So we're going to go ahead and increase our flat throwing fire damage. So we're getting extra additive damage, and 48 ain't a bad pickup off the skill. We're grabbing Piercing Debris. Acid Flask has increased critical strike chance and critical strike multiplier, 200% on both. This is a really nice pickup. It'll allow us to take advantage of uniques like Peak of the Mountain. Up next, we're grabbing Cluster Bomb. It's just going to create these 3 smaller explosions. It's a nice pickup. I don't know if it's really necessary, but nice little pickup there. We are going to get rid of all the armor shred from all sources in the tree and instead make it fire resistance. We have to take this so that we can have our Acid Flasks also ignite enemies. Like I said, we are going to hopefully be having a bunch of flasks getting flung very quickly all at once. We'll use Puncture to keep our mana up, Shift to just get out of the way of things. And I am really hoping that we can lag out at bare minimum, if not crash the game. I want Last Epoch looking like a slideshow. I don't want to play good builds. I want to play jank builds. I have enough characters that are on good builds. I need more characters that are playing jank. Now, when this build eventually falls off, because it definitely will, I will be switching to a net puncture build. I know at time of recording, Dreadful on YouTube already has a video up on his net puncture build, which is very similar to how I was going to build it. The only major differences are in the passive tree, really, and I would definitely trust Dreadful. I will probably end up swapping to his net puncture build when this falls off, but I plan on taking this as far as I humanly can. My goal, if I can't crash or lag out the game because they have improved stability, is like 300 corruption. That's what they're balancing the game around. My goal is 300 corruption before I say that this build has achieved what it has set out to do. Well, its secondary goal. Its primary goal is to crash the game. But, as always, that is it from me for today. Tell me what you think of the build. Does this seem like it could be up your alley? Are you going to play something different? How are you going to build your Falconer? Let me know in the comments down below. Please like, comment, dislike the video if you dislike the video, and most importantly, subscribe. You know, any engagement is good engagement in today's trying times on YouTube, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.